Mr. Mayor, you may begin.
Thank you, Linda. I'd like to call to order this committee of the whole meeting of the Council of the Town of Saugeen Shores and welcome all members of the public who are joining us this evening. We're glad you're with us. The second item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you want to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime if you need to. We have no additions, deletions, or amendments to the agenda. We do have one open forum request, and it is from Bill Bowden, who's here to talk to us about the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee's report, which is on the council agenda, item 7.1. So we'll bring Mr. Bowden on. There he is. So Bill, you've got 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council, for giving me this opportunity to speak to you about the Environmental Sustainability Ad Hoc Advisory Committee final report being submitted to you tonight. My name is Bill Bowden, and I am president of the Southampton Residents Association, a voluntary membership group of approximately 400 families in Southampton and nearby township areas. For a number of years, our key strategic priorities have included promoting and encouraging sustainable development and protecting our natural resources by promoting environmental stewardship. Therefore, we were pleased when Council commissioned the ESAC in 2021. We've participated in ESAC public consultation, and we now support the recommendations in the final report that is submitted for your reception tonight. The SRA goes further than the ESAC terms of reference in also insisting that sustainable development and environmental stewardship should take into account our built heritage. Climate change is the most important issue facing council today. You face twin imperatives. First, the need to reduce the town's and its inhabitants' carbon footprint. And second, the need to ensure that town services and infrastructure are made resilient in the face of climate changes that are already occurring. During the past several years, the town has had to grapple with many issues arising from rapid growth. We submit to you now that no growth can today be considered appropriate unless, as inferred in the ESAC report, it takes into account these two imperatives. Specifically, recommendation 1.3 on pages 22 and following says, review the town Saugeen Shores official plan and strategic plan with an environmental and climate change lens, and notes that although the 2020 corporate strategic plan cites environmental sustainability as one of the town's guiding principles enshrined in its mission statement and vision, it shows only half as often in policy documents compared to other themes. And in the strategic plan, protection of environmental assets is only mentioned in connection with 4 of 27 elements within the town's concluding priorities. The SRA and its members look forward to working with members of council and staff to implement the ESAC recommendations, including changes to the official plan and strategic plan. We welcome your questions and comments. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Bowden. All right, that brings us to the end of our open forum presentations, and now we're going to move on to delegations. We have 3 delegations this evening, and council's allocated 10 minutes for each of those delegations. So I would request that all of the delegations do their very best to keep to that 10-minute time frame, as council's got a fair bit on its agenda this evening. So let's get started. The first one is from Marky Havitz, John Van Bastelar, and Susan Brown, and they're here to talk to us about United Housing for All. And we'll bring those folks in, and when you guys are ready, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to thank council members for this opportunity. My name is Mark Havitz. United Housing for All is a joint committee created in 2021 by members of the Port Elgin and Southampton United Churches. We want to help the town address our community's affordable and attainable housing crisis. To date, United Housing for All has approved 2 goals. First, to assist in educating our community about housing issues and possible solutions to those challenges. And second, to advocate for positive actions which will mitigate this crisis. Our housing situation is driven by multiple factors, one of which is new residents moving to Saugeen Shores. My comments are based from that perspective. When Sue and I married, we were drawn to the Great Lake, which shaped our formative years. So we bought a modest townhome in Waterloo with hopes of buying a cottage in the future. We purchased our Southampton property in 2001, built our cottage in 2005, and moved here full-time upon retirement in 2019. People like us bring good things: civic pride, community spirit, life experience, new ideas, and disposable income among them. But new residents blessed with relatively deep pockets also represent a variable driving up local housing prices. The going rate for local detached homes exceeds $700,000. Hundreds of people born and raised locally, working in service industries, literally can't afford to stay in their hometown. That's more than a problem or inconvenience. It's becoming a disgrace, and it's personal. Already this month, Sue and I have talked with healthcare workers and members of our church who can't afford to buy or rent in Saugeen Shores. You're well aware of these challenges and have laid a proactive foundation for action via the Housing for All initiatives. Now the rubber hits the road. The project in question represents an important step in addressing our high-density rental housing needs. Some will claim that it's too much, but if 170 apartment units built on infill property within meters of a busy provincial highway are deemed too much to absorb, then I'd like someone to explain to me which Saugeen Shores neighborhoods do have that capacity. In fact, it's a small step because below market units aren't included in the plan. We applaud the town's recent initiatives to work with the province toward enabling inclusionary zoning in smaller municipalities. Without hammers of that nature, we have little hope of successfully addressing our housing crisis. In conclusion, I'll state that metaphorically, most citizens play multiple roles in their lives, be it brains, muscles, hands, hearts, lungs, in making society and communities function. People forced to move away and people who can't afford to join us in the first place represent irreplaceable losses. The most vulnerable in that regard deserve respect and attention from everyone, especially those in power. Without them, we risk losing our collective soul. I'll yield to Susan Brown.
Or John, were you going to go next?
Yes, okay, sorry. Good evening, Council. Just as our goal for the Housing for All is to make people aware and understand and think of different ways of dealing with housing. And what we, as a group, we started one already. We had a presentation at a service within United Church, and we had over 600 hits on that presentation. Now, Susan Brown, who I will introduce in a few minutes, was at that presentation, and she stepped forward and said, I would like to be involved. So this evening we bring Susan Brown with her story and support of our initiative to let everybody know how important housing is within Saugeen Shores. Susan, if you could go ahead.
Thanks, John. Good evening, everyone. My name is Susan Brown, and I'm here tonight to share my perspective on housing for all in our community as a lifelong resident of Saugeen Shores and as a parent of 2 young adults who have experienced the realities of the local housing situation. I've always considered myself very lucky to have grown up here and knew from a very young age that I wanted to make my life here. It's also been my hope that my children would choose to live in this community one day, and much to my delight, they have. As is often the case, people don't become aware of issues until they're faced with them directly. In the last 2 to 3 years, the lack of attainable housing in Saugeen Shores has become one such issue for my family. My 25-year-old son has been extremely fortunate to find employment here and was able to purchase his first modest home in 2020 with the help of the bank of mom and dad. And although I felt the price he paid for his house was atrocious, it seems like it was a deal compared to what prices are 2 years later. My 27-year-old daughter, however, has not been quite as fortunate, and she's the main reason that I'm here tonight. My daughter, Alyssa, is deaf, She, like I, loves Saugeen Shores and has always dreamt of being able to live here near her parents, her brother, and her grandparents. Alyssa began her life after college in London, Ontario, with her partner, mainly because he already had a full-time job there. She was fortunate to find full-time employment that paid above minimum wage and provided benefits. Alyssa and her partner rented a nice one-bedroom apartment for $850 a month, plus electricity and parking, totaling about $925 a month. With 2 full-time salaries, they were able to live quite comfortably. Unfortunately, a pandemic ensued. Her relationship ended, and she was left socially isolated and was finding it challenging to financially make ends meet. She needed and wanted to come home to Saugeen Shores and to her family. She returned to us in late 2020, moving back in with my husband and I, and continues to live with us today. She was, fortunately, quickly able to find employment here, but only on a casual basis and paying only slightly above minimum wage. In late 2021, she became permanently employed in a part-time position with a pay increase. And I am extremely happy to report that she began a full-time permanent position today. As her employment prospects started to look more positive last year, we began looking into the rental market in Saugeen Shores, fully expecting to be able to find a suitable one-bedroom apartment for a little less than she was paying in London. After all, London is a big city, Port Elgin is a small town, prices surely must be better. Well, it didn't take long to discover that this is definitely not the case. Not only were similar prices not to be found here, but supply seemed to be virtually non-existent. As this reality began to sink in for me, and as I did more research, it became increasingly clear that Saugeen Shores is facing an attainable housing crisis. With a 0.5% vacancy rate for rental units, not only is there nowhere to live in Saugeen Shores, even if a unit does become available, it's likely out of reach for someone working at or near minimum wage, or for that matter, even several dollars above minimum wage. This situation is simply not right. A community can be defined as a group of people who live in a specific area, but I hope we can all agree that community means or should mean much more. It should be a group of people who work together to create a safe and caring environment for all. I, for one, don't want Saugeen Shores to become an exclusive community, affordable only for those with 6-digit incomes. I want it to be an inclusive community where everyone can have a safe roof over their heads regardless of income. We need to be able to comfortably house our service industry workers, custodians like my daughter, cashiers, servers, and so on. Our community cannot function without these important people. High density housing, such as apartment buildings, are part of the answer to the housing for all problem. Having a percentage of units within these buildings available at below market value is also key. In terms of high density housing, the not in my backyard mentality needs to change. The people who require lower cost housing are not ne'er-do-wells. They're my daughter, your parents on a fixed retirement income, a single mom juggling a job and her family on her own. NIMBYism doesn't build inclusivity in a community. It marginalizes people based on their housing situation. Anyone who knows my daughter would be thrilled to have her for a neighbor. She's hardworking, caring, helpful, and just a lovely human being. Life has put more mountains in her life to climb than most of us will ever have to deal with. It's a community's responsibility to provide a hand up for those on a different and perhaps more difficult journey than our own. You never know when you or a loved one will encounter a mountain and need that hand up too. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, John and Susan. And Mark, just before I turn over to members for any questions or comments they may have, I will just note as a matter of process that because the specific development you've referenced is currently in the middle of a planning process, council and members of council are constrained from speaking about it in this forum. So we certainly can't offer our views on it and can't discuss it. But what I would encourage you to do is make sure to submit your comments, your letter, and all that you've said to the planning committee. So council can receive it in that forum, and we certainly will be able to discuss what you've said in that forum. So with that, I'll ask if there's any questions or comments from members of the committee. Councillor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. And thank you, Mark, John, and Susan, for a very powerful presentation and for being willing to step up to the plate and show leadership in this very well, superbly important community issue. I think with your leadership and efforts, that will help to make us successful. I know we've got a lot to work on, but it's really, really important to have that kind of community participation from people like you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
The deputy mayor and then the vice deputy mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I just want to reiterate what Councilor Grace has said. Susan, John, and Mark, thank you for your presentation. You hit the nail right on the head. Prices have increased, and Mark, I'd even venture to say that you said 700. We're all closer to 800,000 now for a single home. Anything that we can do to get more affordable housing units in here, this council has made the promise that we will try to do it. So working along with groups like yours, I hope we can bring more units to town, because there are a lot of people. And as Susan, you said, anybody that grew up here that works at a minimum wage job, they can't stay in this town, and that's not right. So I appreciate all that you're doing, and I look forward to working more with you.
Thank you. The vice deputy mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, John and Susan, Mark. And Mark, the group that you formed, the United Housing for All group, several months back now. I know I've attended a few of your meetings, and I just want to commend you for all the great work you've done to form that committee, and it's growing. I know there are people that are interested. I know Susan just come on board, and I just want to thank you for that. It's an advocacy group, and boy, you people are going to be a huge help to our community with the message that you presented tonight. And Susan, that I spoke at the United Church there a month or so ago, and you come down and talk to me after, and the pit of my stomach it just really hit me when you told me your story about your daughter. And I just wanted to say, it really hit me again tonight. There's a lot of needs out here in our community, big needs, huge needs, and we do have a housing situation that we need to correct. And I just wanted to say, I think I heard you say your daughter just found full-time permanent position. Did I hear you say that, Susan?
Yes.
Today that happened?
Today, yes.
Oh, that's just tremendous. And to have her back home here, from London, living with you, I think it's just absolutely wonderful. But we need to, people like your daughter and other members of the community need to stay here. It's a wonderful community. And I think what your group is doing is advocating for housing for all, Mark and John and Susan, is a tremendous message. And I want you to know that I mean, this council is working really, really hard to find those market rents, below market rents. And we're working with developers, and we've got the housing reserve. We have got the housing fund we've established and made changes to height densities, and we're working hard. This council has been extremely supportive, and the direction we're heading. I know the mayor is working hard with the county on some other things, and we're going to get there. We can't stop. This is just the beginning, but I think developers are starting to hear us, and the county's listening. And I know mayor's been great with getting the message off to county. So I just want to thank you for what you're doing. I think this advocacy group is a wonderful group, Mark, and Habitat for Humanity too. Let's not forget about that high density development here someday. And Mark, I know you want to get into Habitat. You could go on for about 20-30 minutes about Habitat. I know it's near and dear to your heart, but let's keep that story going too, because we can help a lot of families out. So thanks again for all you're doing.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks, Mark.
Are there further questions or comments for the delegation? I don't see anything.
We're gonna make sure that this town, we're gonna have barbecues and meetings and make sure this town knows the need.
Sure. Thank you, Councilor Dominski.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'd like to say thanks to Susan Brown. I'm still trying to get over that story. And good for you and good for your daughter and sons, and keep it going. John and Mark, I know you two, you're workers, and you will. And you say you're going to have barbecues and so on. Make sure you keep coming back to council as well and tell us, give us updates on it. and what else may be happening. And we can't talk right now about the one that the mayor referred to, but there will be others. And you've got to stay on top of it. Please come back to us because we're going to win this. There is no doubt about it. Thank you and God bless.
Thank you.
You'll be seeing our faces again.
Right. Any other questions or comments? Well, thank you guys very much for your delegation this evening. I think you've heard it from council. There's an awful lot of support for getting more affordable and attainable housing in our community. And it's great to hear folks like you come to council and tell us your story and to offer support for higher density and for getting more affordable and attainable housing and rental housing built in our community. Hearing people come to council offering support for things is always refreshing, and it's a good thing, certainly on this front. So thank you guys very much, and we'll be hearing from you again.
Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on then to item 5.2. Sorry, I just have to flash out of this. A delegation from Patricia Frank on Cedar Crescent Village, and we'll bring Miss Frank. Are you there, Miss Frank?
Video.
Oh, yeah, there you are. You hear us okay there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yep, we got you. The floor is yours.
All right, I'm going to share the screen. That was a great presentation on housing, by the way. Good for them. I admire them. Okay, here we go. See if I can get this right. It's the first time I've done it. And share. And from the beginning, I think I got it. Good
Yep, we
evening.
can see.
There we go. Thank you, Mayor and councillors, for allowing me to speak this evening, and happy Valentine's Day. I am here to address 3 areas of concern with regard to the site plan servicing agreement of the Cedar Crescent Village. 1, the marine commercial zoning. 2, the environmental impact studies requirement. And 3, the noticeable changes in the CCV concept plans between November 2021 and January 2022. Since September 2021, there have been significant changes to CCV site location, square footage, building height, proposed uses, etc. These all require a fresh assessment. The map from Bruce County here shows the Marine Council designation at the waterfront. Where are the land use policies for the marine commercial area within our official plan or comprehensive zoning bylaw as required in the Bruce County official plan? In Schedule A of the Saugeen Shores official plan, the marine commercial designation applies to the proposed site of the Cedar Crescent Village. It does not extend south of Mill Street and is adjacent to both the environmentally protected and open space zones. Schedule 15 of the Saugeen Shores zoning bylaws does not show any marine commercial area. OS1 special zoning allows for a restaurant, recreational facilities, boat and bicycle rentals, and a boat clubhouse with accessory retail facilities. On January 10th, Mr. Posner pointed out that the CCV zoning is not based just on the development site. The provisions outlined in 21.4 apply to the whole OS1 zone up to 6 hectares. The wording of 21.4 is very open-ended and potentially allowing commercial retail developments from Izzard Road to North Shore Park. Although this council may not be planning to allow any further commercial development on the OS1 area without site-specific zoning provisions in the comprehensive zoning laws, there is nothing to stop a future council from allowing just that. The non-compete clause within the CCV lease is only limited to the operation of a restaurant or banquet hall, leaving much leeway for future councils to allow many other types of commercial retail development along our waterfront. There is no marine commercial zoning and comprehensive zoning bylaw 752006. Why is that? Should not the zoning bylaws be amended to include marine commercial zoning? At the January 10th council meeting, Mr. Posner stated that the proponent had submitted hydrogeologic and geotechnical reports for the new site. Do these reports satisfy the SPCA measures for lot grading and erosion control? Saugeen Shores official plan states that stormwater management studies shall be required for any new commercial developments with large amounts of pervious area. Have these been submitted? The site works and servicing agreement is being reviewed and amendments are being made. Schedules B, C, and D of the lease have been amended, including an updated survey and new reference plan. Is it not possible, in the interest of transparency and open communication, to have a link on the Saugeen Shores website to the Cedar Crescent Village active file? It could provide an easy go-to reference for staff, council, and the public of all things related to the development. Poor decisions now will impact all of us for the next 50 years. The province of Ontario requires all municipalities to identify natural heritage systems. This study has not been done, and therefore an environmental impact study is required, as the official plan states. This is to protect significant wildlife habitat. Under section 2.651, it states that where development is proposed in a water feature or adjacent to a water feature that has the potential to contain fish habitat, an environmental impact statement shall be required. And it also states that since detailed mapping is unavailable at this time, development and site alteration may be permitted on adjacent lands only if it has been demonstrated through an environmental impact study that there will be no negative impacts on the habitat of endangered or threatened species. The Saugeen Shores official plan states that an environmental impact statement not only be required for all development proposals within lands designated as environmental hazard, but to the adjacent lands as well. The Saugeen Shores official plan states once again that an environmental impact statement shall be required to assess the potential impacts of the development on the natural shoreline environment, water quality, the constraints of the natural shoreline characteristics, and possible mitigation techniques. In section 3.8412 of the Saugeen Shores plan, new large-scale recreational uses shall require an amendment to the official plan and shall ensure that potential negative impacts on surrounding properties and the natural environment are mitigated. By any standards, 25,000 square feet constitutes a large-scale development. Where is the amendment to the official plan? All amendments to the comprehensive zoning bylaw must conform to the town's official plan as it relates to non-conforming existing buildings, permitted uses, and special provisions. The official plan states that any site alteration in the environmentally sensitive portions of the dynamic beach allowance, such as filling, grading, or vegetation removal, will not be permitted unless supported by the results, once again, of an environmental impact statement and or approval from the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority. On January 10th, Mr. Posner commented that the grade will be slightly affected, having to add 1.1 meters of fill to raise the buildings of the CCV. This raises serious environmental concerns. Where is the fill coming from? What protections will be taken regarding possible contaminants that can leach into the relic sand and into the lake? How will it affect adjacent properties? The height of the main CCV buildings will increase to 11.1 meters. And with the accompanying HVAC systems, the height of the buildings will be as high as the condos on the waterfront. With all cited evidence that I just shared from the PPS, the Bruce County official plan, and the Saugeen Shores official plan, one must ask, why has an environmental impact study not been demanded? It would be appreciated if the hydrogeologic report and the geotechnical report submitted by the proponent were made public. Will these reports be peer reviewed by the SVCA or any other experts in the field? This is the original site map that was attached to the request for proposal in February 2019. And the new reference plan from Schedule B is on the right. Please note that in neither map does the development extend south of the Mill Street corner. On November 22nd, the southernmost polygon in green on the left was designated as outdoor programmable space. On January 10th, this area seems to have disappeared, and the mercantile retail has a noticeably larger footprint. In the amended site works and servicing agreement of January 10th, the new survey reference plan does not appear to match the site plan design, where both the SVCA regulatory limit and the flood hazard line were labeled approximate. Have these boundaries been confirmed by the Saugeen Valley Conservation Authority? At the January 10th meeting, the mayor commented, "This development will have all the amenities that I've heard for so long that people want to see at the main beach, our town's busiest beach, the hub of our beach activity in the town of Port Elgin, a place where people want to congregate, want to have a restaurant, want to have a pavilion that they can hang out in, a place where they can stop by and get an inner tube for their kids to play with, or an ice cream cone. Lots of places to get ice cream cones there now and in the future." Mayor Charbonneau, you were exactly right. You hit the nail on the head. This is exactly what the public wants, that and no more. 25,000 square feet of commercial buildings, 4 large buildings, a play zone, an ice cream shop, multiple private market retail stalls, and 9 retail outlets, as well as the restaurant in the above the mercantile building. Who asked for that? No one but the proponents. When comparing the 2 concept drawings, the one shared on January 10th appears to show significant changes. All buildings on the right, as you can see, seem to have shifted southward. The play zone ice cream shop building has been extended west. The pavilion and the mercantile building both seem to have larger footprints. It would be helpful to have the design concept superimposed over the new reference plan so that the public can see the accurate location of all buildings. Why has the original outdoor programmable space now become mercantile retail? What's the current total square footage of the buildings, including the second floor uses? What is the current square footage of the subject lands in total? In the concept drawings on slide 17 that I showed you, it appears that the mercantile building is south of Mill Street, but that is not the case for the new reference plan. We would appreciate that if this could be clarified. This is Port Elgin's beautiful waterfront, yours to protect. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. If you could just stop sharing your screen there, and thank you. Okay, so we'll ask if there's questions or comments from members of the committee. I don't see any. Oh, Councilor Grace.
Thank you. Thanks, Patricia, for your presentation. A lot of questions there that we can follow up on. I do have a question, just I don't know if somebody from staff can answer this, but one of the questions Patricia asked was about fill, and if fill is required, which it appears it will be, where would that come from? What kind of material would that fill be?
I don't know. Oh, there's the CAO.
I don't know if.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wouldn't be prepared to answer that question tonight, Councilor Grace.
Okay.
Are there further questions or comments? Councilor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Patricia, for your presentation. Just one point of clarification there, Patricia. Did you infer that by your calculations that you thought that the CCV development would be higher than the condominium building?
With the fill and the buildings that are allowed to be 30 feet plus 1.1 meters of fill, plus the HVAC system that will be on the roof, that's allowed to be on the roof, that will make it as high as the 4 stories, 40 feet of the condo buildings.
That seems a little hard to believe, and from whatever I've seen, that's not the case, but thanks for that calculation.
When I looked, may I just add something there? When I looked back at the 2007 approval for the condo buildings, I believe it was listed as 40 feet.
Yeah, we can certainly get clarity on that down the road if we'll be hearing more reports about this, and I'm sure staff can give you that answer later on, Councilor Mayette. Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. And Patricia, just want to thank you for your presentation and some good questions. And I'm just for a follow-up, I'm assuming, Mr. Mayor, that some of the questions that are asked in this report that staff could reach out to Ms. Frank with some of the responses to her questions. Will that happen?
I think we'll provide responses to council where information hasn't already been provided. Councillor Grace mentioned that it can be questions can be answered. As you know, we'll have reports coming back on this. So whatever questions are in here that haven't been answered already can certainly be answered for council's and the public's information at that time. Are there Councillor Davinsky?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. Thank you, Patricia, for your presentation. I don't know who this should be directed at, but Patricia mentioned about a website. Should all this material be on a website? Would it be on the town's website, our responsibility, or would it be on a CCV website? Can someone clarify?
We certainly, all of the decisions and discussions that have taken place at council about the CCV are currently public record and on the municipality's website. And Patricia has suggested that staff look to consolidate that information. And certainly that's something that staff has heard and can consider.
That would be greatly appreciated, Mayor.
Sure. Are there further questions or comments? I would just make the comment, as I've made several times in the past, that the CCV will comply with all regulations, municipal, provincial, conservation authority, and any other regulations that apply to it. And certainly we've gone through a pretty extensive process over the last couple of years of a regulatory compliance discussion. And, part of the reason why it isn't under construction already is because we insist that it comply with the regulations that exist at every level. So certainly the project will not proceed without complying with the official plan, zoning bylaw, Conservation Authorities Act, and building code, and all other relevant laws and regulations. Are there any other questions? If not, we'll say thank you to Ms. Frank. Thank you, Ms. Frank.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, that moves on to our final delegation, which is from Odette Partnicki and Neil Minaj and Nancy Noble and Taylor White, who are all members of the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee, along with Councillor Grace. And we'll bring them all on board here. I see Odette and Nancy and Neil. So whoever is got the presentation, the floor is yours.
Mr. Mayor, I'm starting off with some brief introductory comments, and then I'll finish with some after Odette has finished the main presentation. Mr. Mayor and fellow council members, it's my great pleasure to introduce the members of our Environmental Committee who are in attendance tonight. On this slide, you'll see the members of our committee. Although Odette Partnicki and I will be making our presentation, Neil Minaj, Nancy Noble, and Taylor White are also here to answer any questions you may have. Our committee started our work in April, tasked with the mandate of assessing existing municipal environmental programs and recommending achievable new initiatives. During our review, we noted the good work which the municipality has already completed. Initiatives from the 2009 Environmental Committee like the popular calendar, the annual town tree sale, and offering blue boxes, composters, and green cones for sale at cost. Additional examples of ongoing environmental programs are the waterfront and beach maintenance plans, energy management audit policies to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, and updates to various plans of the municipality, including the official plan. The committee's recommendations fall within the 5 categories that you see on this slide and which are presented in detail in our report. Our work was comprehensive, but not all-encompassing, as the topic of environmental stewardship is immense. The committee is looking forward to receiving feedback from council, staff, and the public after everyone has had an opportunity to look at the report. I'm now pleased to introduce Odette Bartnicki.
Mr. Mayor, members of council, and members of the public viewing from home tonight. Good evening, and thank you for allowing us to delegate. As you most likely already know, 97% of global scientists agree that climate change is real. The International Panel on Climate Change warns of threats to life if we are not able to reduce carbon emissions and global warming substantially by 2030. These photos show climate change extreme weather events experienced across Canada in 2021. While extreme weather events, like the one on September 7th that impacted Saugeen shores, are sometimes seen as part of a natural cycle, a growing body of research shows that these events are more frequent and more severe. There is also significant evidence of rapid diversity loss. This slide shows some of the real costs of climate change. The costs of Canadian climate events last year are in the billions, and much of this is not covered by insurance or government emergency relief funds. A municipality's actions towards mitigation and adaptation will be key to acquiring insurance in the future. The Intact Center at the University of Waterloo provides a number of free resources to assist in meeting the infrastructure demands of climate change. ESAC conducted a community survey through late summer and fall in 2021. The majority of respondents completed the survey online. 29 responses were also received on paper. As well as designing the survey, Professor McLean and his students from Wilfrid Laurier University analyzed results and provided feedback. These analyses, complete with graphs, are included in the appendices of the report beginning on page 88. Of the respondents, 85% support a green bin collection program. 83% indicated that they were either partially or fully concerned with climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. 80% said they had difficulty finding information about the town's environmental initiatives and want more information. 66% indicate that the town's support for environmental initiatives is not adequate. Professor McLean's first comment referred to the 66% of respondents across all age groups who stated that they were satisfied or very satisfied with the quality of life in Saugeen Shores. Professor McLean stated, "This suggests the community has a solid base in terms of its social well-being." The committee interpreted this as being significant. People love this community, but they remain concerned about the environment and climate change issues. Another notable comment from Professor McLean: "I was struck by the many respondents that provided written comments about the importance of diverting waste from the landfill. This level of awareness is impressive." And a few more comments from Professor McLean. Many respondents cited water quality in Lake Huron and the cleanliness of beaches and parks as being important assets and priority areas for attention. A very large number of responses cited the importance of forests and trees within the town. The most likely users of electric vehicle or EV charging facilities would be day visit tourists from Waterloo region and the GTA who could reach Saugeen Shores but would need a recharge to return home. This comment was contributed by a survey respondent. Recent severe weather events, both locally and around the world, have proven no one is safe from the effects of climate change. We have an obligation to our children and grandchildren to act now to prevent the worst impacts of climate change. Preserving forests, woodlands, and parks are important to help absorb carbon dioxide emissions. We must also find ways to reduce emissions in every way possible. Also from a survey respondent, in terms of strengthening environmental municipal policy, mandating the planting of trees for every new build would ensure future cooler neighborhoods, as well as purifying and oxygenating our air. One tree for every set of lungs. And yet another community member wrote, it is important that council take every initiative possible to improve the environment so the next generation can live in safety. This will cost dollars for many new programs. But if we can fundraise for sports, hospitals, splash pad, we could do the same to do our part. Now is the time to lead us to do the right things, make bold moves, sustainability, and we will back you. Councillor Grace will now speak to our committee's top priorities.
The committee mandate asked us to prioritize our recommendations. We divided those priorities into two categories, those achievable in the short term with minimal cost, and those which will require more time and money. The first two on our list, acknowledging a climate change emergency and adopting the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, are important actions which will demonstrate that our municipality is willing to develop a climate action plan. Our committee believes that climate change is a serious threat to our community's infrastructure, the health of our residents and our beautiful environment, and the municipality's bottom line. Just this year, we've seen excessive economic costs in the hundreds of thousands of dollars from severe weather and rising water levels. Adopting climate change and sustainable development goals will help our community to work on solutions through partnerships to reduce our emissions at a rate which will make for a sustainable future. The other four priorities in our short-term category will have some costs through staff time, but shouldn't require significant investments of material or hired consultants. There's no fee to join the Partners for Climate Protection, and membership will provide us with resources as well as increased access to grants. It will also help our staff to create a climate action plan through its milestone program. Having a climate action plan in place is a definite advantage regarding grant funding. Already, we know of nearby municipalities that are eligible for grants now because they have a climate action plan in place. Due to the importance and urgency of climate change, our committee would encourage the creation of a standing environmental committee. However, we recognize that under our current committee structure, a series of ad hoc committees could assist staff in developing policies for council's consideration in areas such as tree protection and waste reduction. A committee could also provide valuable support to staff in raising public awareness and community recognition programs. Although one of our top priorities is having dedicated staff to manage approved environmental and climate change initiatives, the committee also recognizes our budget restraints. It is a recommendation we hope staff will be able to realize as soon as possible and that council will support.
Members of the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee are thankful to council for the opportunity to work together to enhance and protect the environment of Saugeen Shores and to address climate change. We hope that you have found our report informative and inspiring. Fellow members of the committee and myself will now do our best to respond to your comments and questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And before I turn it over to members for questions or comments, I just want to say thank you to the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Committee members, Odette, Nancy, Neil, Taylor, and Diane Huber, who isn't with us today. And of course, Councillor Grace, the chair. Council much appreciates the time that you have dedicated. I will say right up front that I have never seen a community member written report of this quality ever. It is a very high quality report that you've obviously spent a considerable amount of time generating for this council. And obviously that makes life much easier for us if we have a clear report with clear recommendations that us and the community can clearly understand. And so it's so clear how much work you've done on this. I think we really owe you a great debt of gratitude for your work. So thank you so much. And with that, I'll ask if there's questions or comments from members. I'll start with the Vice Deputy Mayor and then Councilman.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just through you, I just want to thank Cheryl. I know this was as chair. I know you're going to give a lot of credit to your committee members, and you should, because I know they've worked very hard on this. But I know as chair of a committee, it's always that extra workload, and leading the group it takes a lot of thanks for that. And thank you, Cheryl, again, because it's extreme amount, like the amount of time you put into this was incredible. And I did read the report, and it's long, but it's high quality. And I just wanted to commend everyone, and without saying your names again, but there are two areas in there. The development of the urban tree canopy plan, I think, is a good for the tree protection plans. I think that's a really solid statement that you've placed into the document, and I hope that those bylaws will be created someday. And we talked earlier, Cheryl, you and I would just pick away at it, right? It's going to take a few years, but when we take a look at the importance of climate change, there's some changes need to be made, obviously, and we need to work away at that. The other thing I was wondering about the Green Box program, and over time, like for a number of residents I talked to in the cottage country, in particular, come up from the city, that they're saying, "Where's your green box?" I would assume that I've done a little research on, but I'm assuming, Cheryl, and Odette, it's really an expensive program, but there are other things we can do if we weren't able to move forward with the full-fledged green box program. Are there other things that your committee talked about that could be second best to a program like that, or do you think green box is something we should be exploring?
Well, as Odette already pointed out, we had a large number, 85% of our survey respondents expressed a desire to have a green bin collection program. Before he left our committee, Councillor Rich, who was part of the Basra board, made an inquiry directly with Basra to find out how much that would cost. And the estimate, that we got for annual amount was an estimate of $35 to $85 per household per year for a full-fledged green bin program. Now, also, our former director, Amanda Froese, told us that the county is looking at this, and that she said that by the end of 2025, the province is probably going to be requiring this, although I don't know, because of our population, although the rate of our population growth, maybe we will be eligible sooner than later, but that's something that's going to be mandated as well. It's important to reduce the amount of organic material that's going into our landfill. We have, it's estimated that when you're talking about carbon dioxide emissions, organic material in landfill is described as a landfill gas. About 50% of it is methane, which is 28 to 36 times more destructive in terms of eating away at the ozone layer than carbon dioxide is. And just from the amount of organic material that many of us throw into the garbage. So your question, Mike, is what can we do as a stopgap measure? Couple of things that we suggest in our report. We already are offering green cone and composters at cost. This is something that the previous environmental committee suggested that was taken up shortly after they dissolved in 2009, and that's a great program. I think we could be doing more to help people understand how to compost, because a number of our comments that we got in our survey said, I'd love to do it, I'm kind of scared of it, I don't know how to do it. I came across an exciting opportunity that I hope our staff will explore quickly, which is a pilot program with a mechanical device called a food cycler, which basically dehydrates, grinds, and processes compostable materials in your home that you can then blend in with your soil. So I hope our staff will look at that. Also from a resident suggestion, we looked at a community compost, neighborhood compost program that's being used and has been used since 2011 in Canmore, Alberta. So they put animal-proof, bear-proof compost depots in their neighborhoods for collection. So that might be something we could look at as well, that a number of other municipalities do that. People really want this, and I hope that we'll explore ways to try to bring that about, even in some alternatives, offer some alternatives.
Okay, thanks again, Cheryl, and thank you to the entire committee. You did just a marvelous job on this. A lot of work, and Neil, it's great to see you back at a council meeting.
Sorry about that. Do you have a comment you want to make, Odette?
I just wanted to add that for many of the recommendations, there is a cost. But if you look forward 10, 20 years, the cost of not doing some of these will end up being multiplied many, many times. In terms of the organics that go to the landfill, we know that our landfill has a limited lifespan, and that lifespan has been somewhat reduced, possibly by development and construction and many other factors. But when you are costing a program like a full green bin program, you have to take into consideration the millions of dollars that it will cost to have a new landfill too.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mayette, I think, had a comment he wanted to make.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two questions. First one is, I'll go with my second question first, which was about the composting and the green bins and that sort of thing. And what's the difference between composting and decomposing? I think Cheryl said, Councillor Grace said that when it decomposes in the landfill site, it produces methane. Are we saying that by composting, it does not produce methane? Because I think your composter is still off gases. It gets hot and off gases. Isn't it the same for both methods?
Yeah, I guess I'm not incredibly knowledgeable about composting, but I know from my own experience that compostable material, if you do it right, it can be used in your soil in your gardens
naturally.
Whereas
yes.
in the landfill, it's just sitting there rotting.
Right. Taylor, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, I'm not, I don't know the exact chemistry of it. Neil might. Neil knows a bit, but no. It has something to do with the rate of breakdown and the oxygen that's accessible to the material. So like, for example, like at a commercial composting facility, it'll get mechanically turned, and that speeds up the rate of breakdown. Whereas when it just sits there, whatever happens, it happens too slowly. So different gases form at different rates because of the lack of exposure to oxygen. That's my very basic understanding.
That's the methane that contributes to, it's a greenhouse gas, I believe, as opposed to maybe an ozone depleting gas. And the other thing, well, I'll go back to what my initial thought was. There are a number of, obviously we know that Saugeen Shores is the fastest growing municipality community in our region. And there are certain reasons for that. One of the reasons is that we do have a landfill. Many municipalities in our region don't, and that gives us a strategic advantage. One of the other main strategic advantages that we have over some of our neighboring municipalities is access to natural gas. And many of us who live in town, I don't, but who do, we heat our homes and heat our water with natural gas. Did you, in your deliberations, go through any sort of exercise to quantify what would be the town of Saugeen Shores carbon footprint for the natural gas that we consume I mean, we're talking about, they call it natural gas and it sounds nice, but we're burning fossil fuels here, right? Which is a direct producer of carbon dioxide, which is a greenhouse gas. And if we're talking about the imminent emergency to our climate, then we're talking about greenhouse gas. And I'm a believer, obviously, in climate change. You only have to look at the very recent past to see the number of events that have been extreme weather events, including today, minus 20 some odd degrees this morning. But did you look at that aspect of our carbon footprint? I know, a lot of people drive big pickup trucks. I have a full-size pickup truck too. And certainly I would like to think that I could be more fuel efficient on my transportation, but home heating, if you're using natural gas, is a significant carbon footprint. Did you go through any exercise to maybe quantify from Union Gas how much gas we use on an annual basis and convert that into carbon units? Did you go into that at all? That's my question.
I'm going to let Odette answer this question if she's okay with that, because she's our sort of carbon footprint expert, and she's done some research into community carbon footprint calculations.
So the short answer is no, we didn't go deep into that area, nor did we go deep into several other areas. With new development, there's a lot of natural gas going in, it's being promoted. And I know I look back to when my parents first converted from the oil tank next to the farmhouse to a propane tank, and later on to electric baseboard heaters, which were very costly. And now I'm in a 2-year-old house, and I want to get off my natural gas and onto a heat pump or solar. Solar doesn't tend to work where I live because of the trees close by, but there's definitely a footprint for it. I think our committee did talk about awareness raising and education, and there are things that we can do in our homes that reduce the amount of whatever energy source you're on for heating. And that would be another way that Saugeen Shores could reduce our footprints, either individually or collectively, by having a drive that says, here are all the things you could do to reduce your consumption.
Yes, thank you. And I agree. We have my friend and our neighbor in the business world, Mike Renchek, likes to go on tour. And one of his common themes is that Ontario has the lowest carbon footprint energy grid in certainly Ontario, certainly in North America, if not the whole world, because of our nuclear advantage. So I have a heat pump, and trust me, they do work even when it's minus 20 outside.
You look warm and toasty there today, Dave. Are there further questions or comments? Councilor Dwinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, I have a couple of comments and then a question for our CAO. First of all, I think Cheryl mentioned that former Councillor John Rich was a Basra representative on that committee. And I took that over when John left. And I saw the green bins collection program here, 85% support. I thought I'd better give Vince Cascone a call this afternoon to see what he had to say about this. And right now, we don't have the equipment to accept the green bin collection, and because you need special trucks. And if he was to do it or if Basra was to do it for all the people that they serve right now, they would need 3 or 4 trucks. And you can believe that those trucks don't come cheap. That doesn't mean they can't do it. It's just that there are some problems with cost. Also, he referred to, as you did, the new legislation where the producers will pay for some of this, possibly in 2025. I know the province is working on it. And that would help. That's 2025 and this is 2022. But it's not something that Basra has ignored. They have talked about it and they will continue to talk about it as we go along. One other thing was in your report, I think I took part in this survey, 66% indicate that the town's support for environmental initiatives is not adequate. To me, that's a bit negative because we'll never be adequate, if you will. There'll always be something else that will need to be done, and we've got to keep our feet to the fire, if you will. And then finally, through you, Mr. Mayor, to Karen Van Mile, 80% said they had difficulty finding information about the town's environmental initiatives and want more information. This becomes the second one of the three delegations that we've had tonight that have said they can't get access to or can't find things on our website. So to the CAO, are there any plans to simplify the website or revisit it and see if it can be updated?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for the question. I don't know that we have any immediate plans on that, but I take note of your point tonight, and I'll loop back with our communications staff on what can be done in these two areas specifically. I know I've chatted with Councillor Grace a couple of times about the results of the survey, so I think there's some work to do, and we've heard that through a number of the recommendations tonight.
Okay, thank you. To the committee, spectacular report. I haven't read the big one yet, but I'm getting through it. And I thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Are there further questions or comments from members? Well, again, I say thank you to the committee. And I think, the reason why we struck this committee and why we wanted this report is so that we could improve. And so obviously there are things that we knew that we needed to do that we weren't doing, or things that we need to improve on. I was impressed because I hadn't seen it myself, the consolidated list of all the things that we have done and are doing. And I think it shouldn't go unsaid that, the town of Saugeen Shores has done a lot in the last decade on environmental sustainability, climate change, and so we should celebrate that success. But clearly there's an awful lot more that we need to do. Your report has laid that out very clearly. What I would like to do going forward, you've laid out as requested a priority list of some of the recommendations, which is good. And I think what would be a good next step would be a small committee of members of council to look at that list and assess those priorities and bring back to council some suggestion on how to advance those priorities and in what order. And we could do that in consultation with members of the committee. So I'm hopeful that going forward, we'll be able to get council to endorse that path forward and action some of these items. I think we've definitely got some low hanging fruit in this report that we can pick off very quickly. And so council needs to organize itself and get that together. And I guess the one final point I'll make is on the one of the recommendations is to strike a committee, a standing committee, and I am the sort of driving force behind not striking standing committees, and I'll tell you why. Particularly on this one, you have a committee of members of the community to do these things. It's council, and we should, and particularly on this issue, we've got a couple of ones. Housing is another one, environment, where council should drive this forward. We have the levers, we control the municipality, and we can advance this quickly. So I think advancing the recommendations of this report ought to be a top priority of council, and I think it will be. And so I'm hopeful we can advance it in that way, and we can be your committee and make this happen. So with that, I'll say thank you very much for all of your work and your time this evening, and have a good evening. All right. And with that, we'll move on then to item 7, report of the municipal officers. And 7.2, general government. The first one, actually the only one under that, is a staff report on the 2022 business plan, and we'll turn it over to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to take a quick moment to appreciate and recognize staff in their hard work in putting together the 2022 business plan for the town of Saugeen Shores. This is the first time that Saugeen Shores has produced a business plan, and it was presented as part of the budget process. And since the budget has been approved by council, it has been updated to reflect that update from the budget process. The business plan guides and measures our progress as we move through our year, and it also helps us celebrate our successes. The plan has 29 major initiatives, which are the goals we're hoping to accomplish this year. In addition, it also outlines 68 division highlights or special projects that our staff will be undertaking at the town. So on top of the day-to-day business that it takes to run a town, we've got a lot of special projects and major initiatives happening in 2022. The plan also really positions us to be future ready. We have a vision of supporting a focused team working together to grow and continuously improve and better serve our community. As part of this business plan, the senior leadership team will be providing quarterly updates to council on the progress related to the plan, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. There is a recommendation, and it is that council approve the town of Saugeen Shores 2022 business plan. Questions or comments? Councilor Grace, and then Councilor Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you. Thank you to the CAO and staff for this plan. It's so helpful to have these goals and strategies for this year articulated so clearly and thoroughly. And I think that articulation is really essential for our success in completing the plan. I wanted to just note a couple of the exciting initiatives that are included in the plan that I particularly look forward to seeing progress on. They're all important, but the development of the Innovation Park, a report to council on accommodation tax, the development of a communications app, which is something that Councillor Vinci just asked about that hopefully will help. Continuing IT improvements, review of our current committee structure, plans for Hallowell and Jubilee Parks, moving forward on the aquatic complex and Lamont Sports Park, undertaking the bike-friendly committee's recommendations, which tie in nicely to our environment committee in terms of active transportation, advancing the rehabilitation and design of the Southampton Town Hall, which has long been on my radar, a review and update of our design guidelines, the water and wastewater rate study, which I know many residents are interested and concerned about, a review of our healthcare portfolio and assets, and an update to our emergency preparedness plan. So thank you again for all your work on this. It's a great report.
Thank you, Councilor Smith.
I'm assuming, can you hear me? Okay, we're back to 2020 where I have to check if I'm off mute. But no, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention how I've longed for this information, and I'm so happy and delighted that it's here. And Cheryl, you touched on Councillor Davinsky's point of accessibility of this information. I think housing the 2022 plan as smart or specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound goals that we can see on an ongoing basis. And as the saying goes, what gets measured gets done. And I think that by virtue of measuring these items, we will have success in accomplishing them. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Further questions or comments? I don't see any. I'll reiterate my thanks for this report. An awful lot of work by a lot of members of staff go into putting a thing like this together. It's critical for us and for the community. I know there's going to be a press release go out about this later on. And I think we should put it front and center, and I hope members of the public will look at it, because it really gives you, if anybody's interested in what the municipality is doing and plans to do this year and what its priorities are, this is where you find that information. And I think many members of the public would be surprised to see the width and breadth of work that the municipality undertakes at any given time. So you've heard the recommendation. All in favor? That is carried. All right, now we're on to 7.3, infrastructure and development, and there's a staff report on the community improvement plan policy implementation framework and the supervisory development services.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Luke. Sort of, I guess, going on the theme of improvement, we're talking about how we can improve, how we understand, what we need to do if we intend to support businesses and the construction of new housing. And so the report outlines a thought process, really, if I can summarize it in a very pithy statement. It's a thought process that I'd like to get your input on. And so when we adopted the CIPs, all three of them, really, there was understanding that if we wanted to support those policies, we needed to be able to support the business expansion, business investment, and housing construction. We needed to have a program where we could evaluate when projects came in, whether they were deserving of our funding and our money. So the report's broken out into sort of two key areas, sort of small investments and then in large investments or major investments. So the small investments for both housing and for business, we are looking to use Spruce to Bruce. On business investments, already committed to supporting and supplementing the existing Spruce to Bruce program for patio and facade improvements in our downtowns. We'd like to partner with the Spruce to Bruce program and how they're evolving their program to include new housing construction. So we're requesting $25,000 from the housing reserve right away. I mean, the purpose is to build housing. What better way than to invest in Spruce to Bruce to build units through their program as it's evolved over the last, few months, actually. And then major investments, we realized quickly that the types of projects that are coming in and the types of requests that are being made by proponents, and I've outlined the examples in the report, will involve a little more thoughtful process. They involve there's a big investment demanded on the community to be able to attract and support housing projects and business investment of a major kind. And we need to evaluate what that means. And so I've set out some thoughts on how we can evaluate the social, economic, and then the financial impacts those projects have and what the consequences of supporting them through our community improvement plan might mean. And so I've presented the report for your consideration.
Okay, thank you. This recommendation, I'll read it, then we can have questions or comments. It's recommended that council endorse the community improvement plan policy implementation report to support both housing and new business investment priorities in Saugeen Shores, and that council endorse the community improvement plan framework application guide to support an objective evaluation of proposals, and that council allocate $25,000 from the newly established housing reserve to support participation in a 2022 pilot of the small incremental investments in housing opportunities as outlined. Questions or comments from members? Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm really pleased with this report. I thank staff and everybody who's responsible for bringing this plan forward. Jay, I guess you're the main guy on this one. I think it's an excellent investment of $25,000. Because it promises, I think, to be useful in forwarding our attainable housing goals, but in many other respects as well. Other goals which will support our community, the vitality of our downtowns, our job force, public-private partnerships, and recognizing the importance of preserving our heritage buildings. So those are just a few, but thank you again for your work on this. I support it.
You. Further questions or comments? Don't see any. I just make a brief comment for clarification. I support the recommendation, but I just want to make it clear for council. I think there's just a little bit of a gap in maybe information between the county and the town. So the changes to the Spruce to Bruce program that are outlined and this residential improvement grant have not yet been approved by Bruce County Council, and is still a subject of discussion at council, and it's likely not going to be considered until March. So the possibility does remain that this grant may not materialize. So as long as council is aware that we're allocating this $25,000, it's possible that we may need to revisit how we support small incremental investments using that $25,000 if the Spruce to Bruce program does not materialize. So that's just for clarity. If there is nothing else, then I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. Okay. Now we are on to the second staff report, which is an assumption of services report and the supervisory development services.
Check that my mic's on. Yeah, this is a report. It's a fairly straightforward report. As subdivisions develop, we have agreements with them that outline our responsibilities as time progresses and as construction is, nearing completion. So the final step in the subdivision agreement is to assume all work so that the town will be responsible for maintenance, replacement, any sort of work that's involved in the subdivision. The town becomes fully responsible per the agreement. So the two subdivisions outlined and shown have met those requirements, and that's what the report's for.
Okay, there's a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to assume all services for the Summerside subdivision, phases 3 and 4, including portions of Normanton Street, Bruce Street, and Devonshire Road as outlined. Any questions or comments? I don't see any. All in favor then? That's carried. Okay. Then we're on to 7.4, Community Services, Parks and Recreation. 2 reports there. The first one is a staff report on the Harbor Light Restaurant lease agreement. And the last time we're going to see the acting director of community services in that capacity. Still see him around, but not in that capacity. The director.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we have a report here this evening regarding the Harbor Light Restaurant. It's a renewal of the 5-year lease agreement that's been in place for quite a few years with the Harbor Light Restaurant, which is on the DFO property, which is down by the harbor, as we all know. The staff did meet with the owner of the restaurant, and we've reviewed the agreement and come up with a new agreement, and we've also forwarded that off to DFO for their input as the owners of the property. So staff at this point are recommending the renewal of the 5-year lease agreement to coincide with the DFO head lease agreement for the property.
Okay, there's a recommendation that council pass a bylaw to authorize the sublease between the town and Joan Johnson. Questions or comments? I think I saw Councillor Mayette put his hand up, Councillor Mayette, and then the Vice Secretary.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I wholeheartedly endorse this recommendation. The Johnsons have been pillars of the business community at the harbor, and renewing this lease for another 5 years, it just extends the tradition that many of us enjoy. And hopefully, once this pandemic is behind us, we'll be able to renew our breakfast meetings at the Harbor Light Restaurant and ice creams in the afternoon, and it will only complement the addition of the other businesses that are hopefully going to be showing up down in that area soon. And for that reason, I'd like to thank Joan and her staff for pursuing the renewal of this lease and keeping that important business going at our harbor. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to echo our Dave Mayette's, Councilor Mayette's comments. They've done a tremendous job down there over the years and continue to provide a real good service for our community. And if I had my way, I'd probably go longer than 5 years. If we can go 10 or more. But Steve, I don't think we can go longer than 5 years. I think with the DFO agreement with Her Majesty the Queen, so to speak, I think that agreement is limited to 5 years. I don't think we can go longer because the agreement we have for small craft harbors is 5 years at a time. Is that correct?
That's correct. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the agreement that we recently signed into with the DFO is the head lease for that property, and part of the requirements for any subleases is it cannot exceed the term of the head lease, which is a 5-year lease with DFO.
Gotcha, Mr. Mayor. Just before Steve leaves, I just want to say thank you to him as well. Steve, you've done an admirable job filling in for the last 3-4 months, and we really appreciate. At least I appreciate all you've done, and with Jane's departure, you stepped right in and didn't skip a beat, and I hope you're staying on for the next year or two, and help us out with a few big projects, i.e., Lamont Sports Park, maybe the pool. So thanks again for all you've done, Steve.
Well, thank you.
Don't let him off the hook yet. He's got one more report to do. Don't let him run off. We need him. Any other questions or comments on this one? I think because we have heard in the past about the length of this lease and why is it different from other leases, lengths that we've made available in that area. And I think it's important just to reiterate that that is the reason why we're constrained to a 5-year lease, is because we're constrained by the DFO. And I think it would be good to continue to press the DFO on that 5-year lease limitation, because I really don't understand why we have a 5-year lease limitation with the DFO. They should, they should be willing to rent it to us for longer. And if we could extend that lease out longer to the owners of the Harbor Light, they would have more stability and they could invest more in their development, in their property or in their business, and that would be to everybody's benefit. So we should continue to lobby the federal government on that front, because that really is an arbitrary restriction. But that's for another day. But for today, if there's nothing further, I'll ask all in favor of the recommendation. That's carried. All right, then we'll move on to the second report, which is a staff report on 2786803 Ontario Incorporated RAD Adventures Agreement, and the acting director.
Thank you. The report before you this evening was compiled by our Recreation Manager Lisa Billings. So it's building upon the success of an agreement that was put in place last year. In all accounts of understand it went very well. They'd like to expand upon that and offer it once again in 2022 in Saugeen Shores on a larger scale. So at this point, staff are recommending that we enter into an agreement with RAD Adventures to allow that to happen in 2022. And if there's any specific questions to the programs, we do have Lisa online here that can to answer those questions.
Very good. Well, the recommendation is that council pass a bylaw to authorize an agreement with 2786803 Ontario Incorporated RAD Adventures. Is there any questions or comments? I don't see any, so we'll ask all in favor. That is carried, and thank you very much, Steve. Much appreciate your work today and all the time that you've spent as acting director. You've done a great job. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, and with that, we'll move on to 7.7, communications and petitions for information, 4 items there. Any comments, questions from members on anything there? Don't see any. So that moves us then on to item 9, reports to department heads. 2 reports there. The first one is an information report on the Municipal Modernization Program Intake 3 update, the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick update for council and the public that the town of Saugeen Shores was successful in acquiring close to $400,000 worth of funding from the province of Ontario in their Municipal Modernization Program. This is a great program that the province is running to help small rural municipalities improve efficiencies and effectiveness in their operations. This is the 6th, we've gotten 6 grants from this fund. And in the last intake, we had 3 projects funded. One was to look at our municipal office facilities and look at improvements and efficiencies there. And we were awarded just over $100,000. The second one was to develop a community planning permit system as part of our affordable housing portfolio that we're looking at. And we were awarded just over $150,000 to look at developing that as a tool in our affordable housing challenges. And the third one was digital modernization of our electronic files. And we were awarded just around $140,000 for that fund. So just an update for council that we were successful on receiving those 3 grants.
Very good. Any questions on that? Don't see any. That's very positive news, and our thanks to the province of Ontario for that support for a few really important initiatives, including a really important one on housing. I think that's going to be a really interesting process and one that I'm keen to see undertaken. The second one then is an information report on the Cold Bridge environmental assessment update, and we have the acting director of development services. There he is. Colin.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I thought it was timely, staff did, to bring an information report forward as far as the Cold Bridge. The initial recommendation, preferred solution from the consultant was to have the bridge removed and not replaced. Now, part of, thankfully, in the EA process, the public has some say in this, and public had comment, and all of them came back saying, no, we'd like to see something put in place. So the consultant, along with staff, are working on that right now. There will be a final report. They're replying to all the letters and getting the final report ready for council to give their recommendation of number 4, which will be to remove the bridge and replace with a single lane structure. That report is due be coming in the coming weeks, but we can't say for sure when it will be here.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mayette and the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Colin and to Adam Stanley, who worked a lot on this report and this process, the environmental report. And I'm certainly, as you can imagine, very pleased to see that the recommendation has changed to build, lo and behold, a single lane bridge, which that location has had a single lane bridge for 90 plus years. And I've yet to see a traffic jam on that bridge, and I can see the bridge from my kitchen window over here. So I think a single lane bridge is an excellent idea. And I'd like to thank the members of the public who took the time to, in some cases, put together very detailed responses to the environmental analysis, the EA study, and that it reinforces the fact that the EA process does work, and that when people feel passionate about issues and they write in, that it actually makes a difference. So I'm really happy to see this, and I'll be happier when we secure some funding from, hopefully infrastructure funding from the province in the not too distant future to make this project a reality. Thanks very much.
Thank you, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And through you, yeah, concur with Councillor Mayette. This is a good news. My question to Colin is there a reason why we or the consultants don't want to go with a concrete culvert rather than putting up the steel bridge? I imagine it's quite significantly reduced in price, but you see them all over the concession roads all throughout Ontario. Do you have any idea why we're not doing that?
From what I understand, and when obviously I'm not been totally onto the project, but from what I understand, that was looked at. It's not something that could be put in that location. Now, what I'll probably do is I'll confirm that with Adam Stanley, but from what I understand, that just was not conducive to that spot. It has to be the bridge structure.
Thank you.
I can determine or figure that out and get you an email if that works.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Colin.
Yep.
Vice Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just a quick comment, Mr. Mayor. I just want to thank again, like Councillor Mayette did, and just about the members of the public who came forth and spoke up about the importance of that one lane bridge that Dave's mentioned has been there 90 plus years. And it's a good, for me, I think it's a positive development that, you know, it's being replaced to one lane. And, you know, there's snowmobilers and ATVs. I'm not sure what all other equipment use that bridge, but it's an important linkage there. And so I'm really pleased. Colin, thanks for your good work, you and Adam, Colin, on this report. I think it's a real solid decision. So thanks for your good work.
Well, I'd like to take credit for it, but really this is Adam's work. He has to take credit for all the work he's done on this.
Very good. Any other questions or comments? I think, frankly, I would have been surprised had we decided to remove this bridge and not replace it. This seems like it was an inevitable outcome. So I'm pleased to see this report, and thanks to staff for all of their work. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the Committee of the Whole. We'll do a quick round of announcements by members. The Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have two things tonight, which will be brief. One good news, one sad news. I'll start with the sad news. This coming weekend is the final weekend of the Port Elgin Twin Cinemas. Tom and Christine have sold the business, and after many, many years, I know I've been going there since I was a teenager. I remember we took a bus from Southampton to go watch Grease, Rocky Horror Picture Shows, and it's been a mainstay with me and several of my friends. Tuesday nights, Marvel, Lord of the Rings, all that stuff. So congratulations to Tom and Christine, but it's a business that's sorely going to be missed in Saugeen Shores. The second piece of news, I'd like to congratulate our Saugeen Shores Police Force for the excellent job they did at handling the protest movements this weekend. everything was safe and orderly, and no matter what you think, everybody's opinions were accepted, and our police force kept everything safe. So thank you to them.
Thank you, Vice Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few, I'll be quick with a few though. I just, this past weekend was pretty incredible with the tankard at the Plex, and Doug Flowers and the over 200 volunteers just did a amazing job. Spent a good part of the 3 days there and saw a lot of good curling. I know you there and a few members of council were there, and to Doug and his committee, just a tremendous job. Thank you. And the Saugeen Shores Fire volunteer firefighters, back in January 26th, Mr. Mayor, there was a fire over top of the Queen's Bar and Grill, and I was talking to one of the firefighters there, and Matt can maybe comment on it too, but 7-minute response time, pretty incredible. And that's the reaction, the response. I just wanted to say big thank you, Matt, and all the volunteer firefighters for the great job they did that day. Pretty incredible work. Mr. Mayor, we have a bit sad story today, and I just wanted my condolences to the driver for Smart that was killed tragically today in a collision on County Road 19 early this morning. As you know, I'm on the Smart board, and I just wanted to got the news this morning of one of our drivers lost a life. So I just wanted to pass on my condolences to that family. We won't release right yet, but sad day for Smart and for that family. So just want to pass that on.
Yeah, I'm sure council expresses that sympathy with you. Councilor Smith.
Thank you. Just warm wishes to our OWHA and OMHA teams who are the Saugeen Shores minor hockey teams participating in their playoffs. All are happy to be back on the ice safely. And in particular, our U13 rep team were runners up in the Silver Stick competition yesterday in Kincardine. Congratulations to them.
Yeah, we'll move on then to Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also, I just want to extend my congratulations to the organizers and sponsors, volunteers, and the spectators who made the tankard a really fabulous event. I was lucky enough to be able to watch the final round yesterday, and it was just really a positive, successful experience for our community, supporting our businesses. It was wonderful to see those hotel parking lots full and hear people talking about going to this restaurant and that, the restaurants that put on the meals. And it was just a wonderful event. And hopefully we can do it again soon.
Absolutely. Councilor Dubinsky.
It's a brand new series. Saugeen Shores Winterhawks and the Tavistock Royals are tied at 2 apiece in the best of 7 quarterfinal series. And I have to say that of all the games I've seen this season, the games between these two teams have been the best. They play again this Friday at the Plex, 8:30. Hope everybody, if you get a chance, will come out. Everybody's smiling because I'm doing a commercial, but it's great hockey, and it's a lot of fun. Also, happy Valentine's Day, and that's all I have.
Thank you. Councilor Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Nice and short for me tonight. I just wanted to draw everybody's attention to some communications that had come out from the AMO back on January 28th, just because we haven't met since then. Obviously a passion of mine. Firefighting is something that is on the forefront right now, and it has to do with certification of firefighters in the province of Ontario. Definitely support certification and training for firefighters as a whole, no doubt about it. Not saying anything wrong with that there, but I hope it's something that we look at. Through Ontario, if you look out of the 455 fire departments that we have in Ontario, 227 of them are volunteer, 196 are composite, which is a combination of volunteer and full-time, and only 32 of those are full-time. And they're looking at legislation that is directly affecting volunteer firefighters, which, I know ourselves here in Saugeen Shores, we've definitely been proactive. We have a very, very well trained fire department, which is trained well beyond the standards that they're proposing here. But it's pretty safe to say that municipalities around us with the budgets maybe not so well looked after, and the commitment and the long-term commitment that we see in our fire department. We don't have the short turnarounds of the smaller communities out there, you know, rural Ontario, Northern Ontario, everywhere else. We got to speak for everybody here. It's time to say something, because this is legislation that can affect firefighting across the province of Ontario, and take it, you know, the level of fire protection that municipalities will be able to offer as a whole is drastically going to be reduced if all firefighters across Ontario are meant to meet the same training standards. Once again, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. We need the training. We train to live. We live to train. It's one of those things that is on the forefront, but it's something that has to be approached properly. And I just wanted to make sure, brought some attention to it. Then hopefully it's on people's radar, and we'll go back and have a quick read of the AMO publications and then the links through that back on January 28th. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. Councillor Mayette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say nothing for me, but it wouldn't be a council meeting without a fish update. Just to let you know what's going on down in our hatchery. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be doing a whole bunch of fin clipping, where we clip the adipose fins off of our 18-month-old rainbow trout, which are all about 6 or 8 inches, about 50 grams. And we clip that fin so that when they return to the river, the Ministry of Natural Resources can tell whether they are stocked fish or whether they're naturally returning fish. So we'll be doing that at the Port Elgin Hatchery on February the 27th. So if anybody would like to see how it's done, or there's opportunities for participation with appropriate COVID protocols in place, of course, on the 27th between, say, 10 and 3 in the afternoon. So bring your kids down if you want, see some fishing action. Thanks very much.
Very good. I think one day it would be nice, Dave, if you wrote out the fishing report and gave it to Councillor Davinsky to read in his voice, and then it would be a real ad. Be good.
I think you're right. We are actually we're contemplating a delegation to council one day soon to talk about our fishing club.
All right. That's good. You guys have mentioned most of the things I wanted to mention, and that's good. I won't reiterate. There is the one thing. Last week we had our first meeting of the Saugeen First Nation and Town of Saugeen Shores Community Economic Development Committee. And it was a really positive meeting, starting to set up a framework and working toward a joint meeting between our councils, hopefully in the next couple of months, which is a first in my time on council. And I think it's going to be a really positive thing. So you'll be hearing more about that in terms of planning it and the timing, but it's a really positive initiative that's going to lead us to new places in our relationship with the First Nation. So with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Smith. All in favor? All right, we're adjourned, and council will convene at 8:23.
So we're approaching 8:24. If we can get all members to turn on their cameras, we'll be set to go. Or Mr. Mayor, you may begin.
Thank you, Linda. Then we'll call to order this regular council meeting. And the second item on the agenda is disclosures of pecuniary interest. Ask any member if you have one of those you'd like to declare at this time. Seeing none, of course, you can do that anytime. That moves us on to additions, deletions, amendments. Don't have any of those. Don't have a public meeting. So we're on to adoption of the minutes. And I have a resolution that council adopt the minutes of the council meeting of January 24, 2022, and note and file the minutes of the committee of the whole meeting of January 24, 2022 as presented. Excuse me, is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Mayette. All in favor? It's carried. All right, that moves us then on to item 6, reports of the committee of the whole. And the first one is a general government report regarding the 2022 municipal budget. And I have a resolution that council adopt the municipal budget for 2022 as follows. Expenses, $29,319,453 for operating, $19,454,114 for capital, for a total 2022 budget of expenses of $48,773,567. Net reserves contributions under operating, $6,917,018. Capital, capital, negative $9,695,832 for a total 2022 net reserve contribution of negative $2,778,814. Reserves and other funding, operating $18,699,508. Capital, $8,049,750. And for a total 2022 budget of revenues and other funding of $26,749,258. Total municipal taxation for operating $17,536,963. Capital $1,708,532 for a total 2022 municipal taxation of $19,245,495. That the town of Saugeen Shores tax levy for 2022 be set to $19,245,495, and that the BIA levies for 2022 be set at $33,000 for the Port Elgin BIA and $29,350 for the Southampton BIA, and that council pass the tax levy bylaw establishing the 2022 tax rates at a future date. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the Vice Deputy Mayor, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? That is carried. All right, that moves us then on to item 2, which is an infrastructure and development report regarding the transportation master plan, on-street parking policy, sidewalk policies, and the county official plan amendment comments. And I have a resolution that council adopt the transportation impact assessment guideline, that council approve the on-street parking review request policy, that council approve the sidewalk winter maintenance policy and the sidewalk prioritization policy, and that council support the proposed amendments to the County of Bruce official plan. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Grace, seconded by Mayette. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? It's carried. All right, that moves us then on to item 7, report of municipal officers and committees. And the first one is the report of the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. And I have a resolution that council receive the committee report with recommendations from the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Masson, seconded by Smith. Any questions or comments? Councilor Grace.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just before I didn't have a chance to say this when we were doing our delegation, but I'd like to thank council for creating this committee. I'd like to thank staff for its great support in time and expertise, and to the public for its thoughtful input and interest. We were really impressed. The committee was really impressed with the time that many members of the public took to complete their surveys, and as well as emails that we received and other questions. It was inspiring to see the interest shown by the public. But in particular, I'd like to thank the dedicated members of the committee. It was a real pleasure to work with this group, and their contributions will have an important and positive impact on our community for years to come. So thank you very much for that. Thanks.
Thank you. And as I said, the delegation will repeat council thanks you, Councilor Grace, and all members of the committee for your hard work on this. It really is, and I said it really is an outstanding report. And that's not hyperbole, it really is. So thank you so much for your work on it. I was, and one comment I wanted to make is I am keen to see implementation move forward on the recommendations, particularly the quote unquote low hanging fruit that was identified by the committee. And as I suggested during the delegation, I would like to have council put together a working group of members of council to recommend back some priorities to implement. I'm wondering if it would be appropriate for council to direct the striking committee and Councilor Grace to do that work. I think that may be a suitable working group of council to advance going through those priorities, and we could come back relatively quickly to council with some actions. So I wonder, I'm just dropping on you at the last moment so you can think about it, but I wonder if it would be possible, or if you would consider as part of this resolution, directing the striking committee with the addition of Councillor Grace to review the priorities and come back to council with some recommendations on how to prioritize the recommendations of the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee. Your thoughts, Councillor Grace?
Thanks. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that would be great. Would staff be involved in that as well?
Yeah, so of course, the CAO advises the striking committee. And so if it's the striking committee working, then the CAO is involved.
Great.
Along with the clerk.
Thank you.
Anybody, would there be any objection to adding that direction to this resolution? I have a mover and seconder, Matheson and Smith. Does a mover and seconder object to that? No. So I'm just going to add that council direct striking committee and Councillor Grace to review and prioritize the recommendations of the committee.
Mr. Mayor, just as you're writing, just wondering if you about the striking committee and Councillor Grace, can we add 4 words in consultation with staff? It really worked well with the Attainable Housing Task Force. We did a similar thing, but it was in consultation with staff, and they were terrific helping to prioritize. And so I hope we could add those 4 words in consultation with staff.
Done. So the resolution reads as follows now: that council received the committee report with recommendations from the Environmental Stewardship Ad Hoc Advisory Committee, and that council directs the striking committee and Councillor Grace to review and prioritize the recommendations of ESAC in consultation with staff. Any other discussion of the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. Okay, then that moves us on to the second report, Lamont Sports Park Fundraising Committee. And there is a resolution that council received the Lamont Sports Park Fundraising Committee's report and amend the committee's terms of reference to include the revised sponsorship levels outlined in the report. Is there a mover and seconder? By Matheson, seconded by Smith. Questions or comments? Councillor Matt, or pardon me, the Vice Deputy Mayor, and then we'll get the Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I want to shout out to the Lamont Sports Park Fundraising Committee, the volunteers I'm speaking of. They're working extremely hard in behind the scenes. We've already made 5, 6, 7 presentations, both verbal and written, and maybe 8, and working really hard, going beyond the call of duty, some of these people, and just wanted to thank them. And I want to say that with the donor agreement on the agenda attached this evening, there'll be 3 of those donor agreements completed in the next week, and won't announce who they are yet, but they're significant, and we'll have some form of announcements in March, and all of the committee and council will be invited to those announcements. And I just wanted to also say that that I appreciate council support tonight. We're hoping that it will be a unanimous support around those new funding categories of the 10, 20, 30, 40. It's really important to provide the committee with those tools to work with. We've recognized that during our ask process that we needed to do some adjusting to our categories, and this will help us a lot. So I hope there'll be support for the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I really don't have to say anything now because the Vice Deputy Mayor said it. I just want to make sure that everybody understands that what we're doing tonight is just changing some funding numbers, and it makes it easier for the group to do what they need to do to raise money. So I totally support it.
Excellent. Any other questions or comments? I can say, just to vouch for what the Vice Deputy Mayor said, the committee's doing some outstanding work, and having been a little bit involved from the outside myself, it's really coming along really well. So looking forward to some announcements in the near future. And with that, I'll ask all in favor. That's carried. All right, and that moves us on to the third report, which is a staff report on filling vacant office of Port Elgin Ward Councillor. And there is a resolution that the vacant office of the Port Elgin Ward Councillor be filled by appointment and that council approve the procedure to fill a council vacancy. Is there a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Carr, seconded by Grace. Does the clerk wish to give us a few words just outlining for the interest of the public what this means?
Certainly, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we will be using the same procedure as we did last fall, and that includes advertising for the vacant position. So any eligible candidate, eligible elector in Saugeen Shores, they may put their name forward by filling in a application, and then they take a declaration of oath. They also provide us with a brief background, whatever information that they wish to share with us. So we'll be posting the deadlines for those applications. Along with that, we're also asking the candidates to answer some questions. They'll provide the questions in writing, and council will be provided their responses in advance of the appointment meeting. During the appointment meeting, which we expect to be that second or third week in March, council will then hear a 3-minute presentation for each of the candidates. They'll be asked one question, which they'll respond to. And then council, after hearing all of the presentations by the candidates, they'll do an open vote. And at that point, the vacancy will be filled by appointment.
Okay, thank you for that. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, Linda. So just to clarify, anybody who is interested has to come into the town office. You can't download the application online. They have to come into the town office.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the application will be available on the website. They can fill it on. It's a fillable form. They can print it out, but they do need to meet with me in person, and we'll go over the form. And if I need any additional information, they also need to bring their identification in at that point in time as well.
And there's no fee for doing this, correct?
No, there is not.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that.
You're welcome.
Sure. Any other questions or comments about this? Seeing none, you've heard the resolution, then all in favor. It's carried. All right, then we're on to the fourth report, which is a staff report on the Bruce Road 25 Outlet Design Build Award. And I have a resolution that R&M Construction be awarded the contract for the design build of the Bruce Road 25 Outlet Retaining Wall in the amount of $178,095 plus applicable HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary documents. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Carr, seconded by Grace. Any questions or comments to this resolution, the deputy mayor, and then the vice deputy mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. 178,000 seems like a lot of money. We've spent a lot of money on this retaining wall and parquet. At some point, could we get a total costing for this, the parquet and everything that's required down there? Well, Carlin, would you be able to get that at some point and get it to us?
Yes, I can.
Thank you very much.
Good.
You're wanting, just to clarify through you, Mr. Mayor, Deputy Mayor, you're wanting for the parquet, you're wanting the whole project, not just the retaining wall?
Yeah, the project, what was just what it then costing would be. I understand the importance of it. I just wonder, seems like a lot of money for retaining walls, but just what's the whole costing, please?
Okay. Vice Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I just want to thank Councillor Carr for chairing this committee. I know Councillor Matt sat on that committee as well, and they've done an excellent job and lots of meetings and on site, and they brought it forward and got it done. And I think this is going to be a wonderful, I mean, it's going to be a good project down at the bottom of County Road 25. It's going to be gold standard. And so I just wanted to commend you, Matt, for all the good work you've done, Dave, and bringing that project forward. So I think the residents in the area are going to be pleased with it.
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor? One is carried. And that moves on to the final report in this section, which is a staff report on the River Road Bank Stabilization Tender Award, and I have a resolution that Cambridge Landscape and Construction Limited be awarded the contract for the River Road Bank Stabilization Project in the amount of $598,256 plus applicable HST, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to sign the necessary documents. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by the deputy mayor, seconded by Carr. Questions or comments to this resolution? Don't see any. It's good to see this project advancing. This is a good investment on an important road in Saugeen Township, and I know the folks out there will be keen to see this investment made. So good one to move forward. If there's nothing further, all in favor? That's carried. All right, then that moves us on to bylaws. We have only one bylaw tonight. Well, two, I suppose, with the confirmatory. I have a resolution that the following bylaws are hereby read as first, second, and third time and finally passed and sealed this 14th day of February 2022. 1/9/2022 being a bylaw to appoint certain officers and employees for the town of Saugeen Shores, and 2/10/2022 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council meetings of the corporation of the town of Saugeen Shores. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Davinsky, seconded by Smith. Any questions or comments to the resolution? Seeing none, all in favor? That's carried. All right. So then we're on to our final resolution, which is that this regular council meeting of February 14, 2022 hereby adjourns at 8:41 p.m. Is there a mover and seconder? Moved by Mattson, seconded by Smith. All in favor?